According to the Federal Reserve, baby boomers have officially become the richest generation to ever live, with a combined net worth of 4 times that of millennials. But despite the fact that no living generation will ever reach that level of wealth accumulation, many boomers still believe they got the short end of the stick. With a conviction so strong, people are already attacking the premise of this video without even giving me a chance.
Welcome to Pegasus versus the World, where we take on challenges, comedy, trending topics, and some travel. City boy! All right, I thought this looked interesting. This is why boomers insist they had it harder. Damon Cassidy is the channel. Make sure you go over there and check out the original, because that's always important. But I figured it's worth checking out. I know I have a few boomers that rock with me. So what do y'all say here, man? You guys is on the bring them up to the front of the court. Let's testify. Anyways, we're going to see what's cracking here. I think this is interesting because, you know, I just did a reaction with a Gen Z kid on my music reaction channel to The Living Years. And some of the lyrics reminded me of how the generations, the generations will always blame other generations. And I don't think it's necessarily fair for, either side, but I think both sides have advantages. And there's a conversation to be had, right? Like the Gen Z has the advantage of technology and the internet. Whether they want to believe it or not, there's a lot of advantages. For example, in my industry, I'm giving out physical flyers when I'm young, print CDs, cassette tapes, and now people can get music to people instantly and just text message someone a flyer or do a post on Facebook. So there's advantages, but there's also disadvantages, right? The housing market is absolutely out of control. Interest rates are out of control. But I remember there was a time, I think interest rates were like 14% in the 80s or something like that. My parents were telling me about that back in the day. So I wanted to see what he had to say, because there's always a little more complexity to these conversations than everyone realizes. And I'm just a simple man. I like beans and rice, so we talk about it over here. All right, let's get it, man. Let's bring it back from the jump. If you rock with me, like, share, comment, subscribe. I'm Black Pegasus. Link in the description of my other channels. There you go.
According to the Federal Reserve, baby boomers have officially become the richest generation to ever live, with a combined net worth of 4 times that of millennials. But despite the fact that no living generation will ever reach that level of wealth accumulation,
So I'm a millennial. I was born in 1980. That makes me a millennial, right? So it goes boomers or baby boomers, millennials. And isn't Gen X millennials too? And then Gen Z? Or does it go boomers, millennials, Gen X, Gen Z? I'm confused now.
Many boomers still believe they got the short end of the stick. With a conviction so strong, people are already attacking the premise of this video without even giving me a chance to explain. So why is the wealthiest generation in American history so convinced they lived a life of hardship? Following World War II, while both Europe and Japan faced the immense task of rebuilding from the war's catastrophic destruction, the industrial dominance of the United States, combined with nearly 70% of the world's gold reserves, allowed it to emerge as the dominant force in the global economy. And as the US accounted for half the world's industrial output, it was also backed by strong union representation and newly developed labor protections, which drove wages up by over 60% by the end of the war, allowing—
It's so crazy to see like the U.S. producing stuff at that level, because anyways, you guys know what I'm talking about. We don't produce as much anymore, but seeing that kind of makes me proud. Like, damn, man, like we could have just been that. We could have been that guy. We kind of let go, man. We kind of did this to ourselves a little bit, huh?
Millions of soldiers to return home to a nation primed for economic growth, where between 1946 and 1964, 76 million baby boomers were born in the United States, an increase of nearly 50 million more children than the baby booms of the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia combined, setting the cultural expectation that the sheer size of the baby boom alone would guarantee continued American prosperity. But despite the baby boom being fueled by post-war economic expansion, where homeownership jumped from just 40% before the war to over 60% by 1960, it's crucial to understand that the majority of parents tasked with raising nearly half the nation's population had spent their own childhoods under a rigid and disciplinary model mirrored by the assembly line, as children contributed nearly 30% of household income leading up through the 1930s, where this live-to-work mentality was only compounded by the psychological weight of the Great Depression followed immediately behind the responsibility of defending the country throughout the Second World War. And while history would later come to label this period as the golden age of capitalism, for the parents living through it, it wasn't about prosperity. It was about figuring out how to raise a child in a world they didn't recognize, creating a parenting model fundamentally rooted in fear and unspoken rules, as they prioritized permanence, routine, and material stability, while attempting to resolve their own childhood traumas and anxieties through the lives of their children.
These boys greet their dad as though they are genuinely glad to see him, as though they had really missed being away from him during the day and are anxious to talk to him,
causing hundreds of thousands of parents to look for the aid of professionals to help mold what was increasingly seen as the perfect child, where Dr. Benjamin Spock's The Common Sense Book of Baby and Childcare became the defining voice of this movement, selling over 500,000 copies in just 6 months, second only to the Bible, where his philosophy emphasized a permission to be flexible, prioritizing emotional well-being and personal happiness over the strict disciplinary model their parents had experienced. However, this emphasis on flexibility and responsiveness was often twisted into permissiveness, where parents now believed they had the right to relinquish their authority and replace it with the pursuit of material goods.
Wow, that needs to be highlighted in this, because this is the inception, or the beginning. Inception might not be the word, but a beginning of a lot of the domino effect of that we see today. Because these parents who went through, y'all know the saying, I might biff it right now, but hard times make hard men. Hard men make easy times. Easy times make soft men. I'm totally biffing that, but I should pull it up because it's a great quote. Can you pull up the quote? Hard times make hard men make easy times make soft men, or however that's said exactly. I know I'm biffing. I think I get the gist of it. But anyways, this is an example of that. People coming from, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. So we had this period of time where people went through the ringer. We talking about the Great Depression. We ain't even had anything like that, I don't think, since then, right? We've had recessions, but we haven't gone through the Great Depression was crazy, bro. I think I saw something where they were just like, banks just shut down and said, hey, we can't give you your money. People had money in the bank and was like, oh, let me go get my money out so we can figure this out. And the banks were just like, we don't have no money. Like, it was just insane. Like, full-blown families just sleeping in parks in the back of their car. Like, bro. Anyways, y'all tap in, because I wasn't there, but I think I read something about that or saw something. I just remember in the Great Depression, there was times where people went to the bank and could not withdraw their money, and that freaked me out. Anyway, they went through the Great Depression, the World Wars, all this stuff that made them rigid, created these characters. And then, they're saying this book, I don't know if it did everything, but, essentially those hard times made strong people. I'm not going to say strong men, because it made strong people. And then, as it said in it, strong men create good times. So these strong people created good times. We're in this, this time period where everything's good. And then what does it say exactly? It says good times create weak men. And all I'm saying is, if you fast forward today, it doesn't seem like we've gotten stronger as a nation, stronger as a people. We've gotten weaker. And I think that might have been a highlighted point to see where some of this trajectory started. Maybe it started with people internalizing this book, or just sometimes when you just have, better times, you just have a lack of discipline. Also, they were healthier back then. You see all these videos, but all the people are slender, slim. Now we have an obesity epidemic. So I could go off the rails with a lot of different things, but there's a moment there to be highlighted. This is good so far. I like it.
Resulting in cultural movements where psychologists, educators, and even Eleanor Roosevelt encourage parents to treat their children as adults, warning that if parents use...
See, that's that bullshit. That is that bullshit. Like, I'm raising 2 kids. You don't let them act like adults. I'm not going to call out. I'm just going to say this. We're very disciplined with our children's eating, right? They don't not eat sugar like that. Every now and then, once a blue moon, they can have some ice cream. You know what I'm saying? Like, the cheat meal is, we get pizza, once or twice a month. But overall, we're very disciplined because I realize how sugar wrecks people, and it has even wrecked me at some capacity. But long story short, there's people around us who have kids and they just let their kids eat whatever. And it is crazy, you guys. And this is when you start treating kids like they the adults, like they can make the decisions. And you need to have the foresights and insights to make the right decisions for your kids to guide them to the finish line of adulthood.
Too much discipline, it could lead to years of emotional damage. Where Lawrence Samuel, an American cultural historian, explained that Europeans who had taken jobs as camp counselors in the United States throughout the late 1950s were taken back by the brashness of American children. Campers were pseudo-mature and superficially self-assured, with respect given to adults only if the latter provided their worth. Having fun was pretty much all that mattered to these campers, with the descriptor spoiled coming up more than any other. American children were already highly materialistic, these counselors concluded, far more interested in things like cars, television, and business than their European counterparts. Parental love was expressed mostly by the means of things purchased for the campers, a stark contrast to the generational bond in counselors' own countries. With the New York Times stating, the overprivileged, overprotected, overindulged child of the oversolicitous parent may well grow up with problems as difficult to himself as those of the youngster who has had too few of the good things of life. Meanwhile, as the Cold War reignited the nation's growing fear of communist expansion, policymakers and educators began framing baby boomers not just as children to raise, but as a mass population to manage, arguing that a rapidly growing America would require greater centralization and government control at the expense of traditional values like autonomy and self-determination. As Robert Cook, director of the Population Reference Bureau, warned in Parents Magazine, how long will it be possible to maintain the American tradition of liberty for the individual in an increasingly crowded economy is another basic question, one for all Americans to ponder. However, instead of national reflection, economist Walt Rostow, chief advisor to Kennedy and Johnson, outlined in his 1960 Cold War Manifesto, The Stages of Economic Growth, that the final goal of American development was not political liberty or individual autonomy, but high mass consumption.
Get the F out of here. I mean, that's where we're at right now, high mass consumption. I randomly said that at the beginning. I was like, man, we used to make stuff. Damn, what is going on? So this has all been designed and planned?
Where he argued that technological innovation and material abundance, not population growth, would drive economic success, fundamentally shifting the economy to prioritize the short-term effects of the baby boomer size and future purchasing power, rather than establishing the jobs and systems needed not only for the boomer generation as they came of age, but for future generations to come, with teachers specifically being instructed to discourage individualistic thought and action by instead overly promoting group participation, turning the classroom into a tool to shape conformity. Preparing students to serve a collective, disciplined, and economically productive role in America's ideological fight against communism. A decision that not only cemented consumption as the backbone of American life, but abandoned long-term planning in favor of immediate political and economic gain, placing even further pressure on a generation already being plagued with unrealistic expectations. With American journalist Betsy Fancher stating, "In our efforts to provide all the advantages, we have produced the busiest, most competitive, highly pressured, and over-organized generation of youngsters in history, and probably the unhappiest." Where a 1959 report issued by the federal government, based on classroom observations from educators and visitors, revealed that American school children, many in 4th through 6th grade, were already showing signs of deep emotional distress. The report described students as burdened with inner anxieties and in need of security and reassurances from their parents and teachers. Common fears included failing tests, parents becoming sick or unemployed, and more extreme anxieties like being hurt by knives, poison, fire, or holdup. But the most striking phrase used was a pervasive fear of life. Where as a result of the Korean War and rising military tensions, Samuel Witchell, a professor of social studies at Glassboro State College in New Jersey, argued that families' increasing habit of relocation had much to do with children's discontent and growing distrust of authority. The post-war expansion of the economy, construction of interstate highways, and creation of entirely new neighborhoods encouraged Americans to move for better job opportunities. But just as the suburbs failed to offer a lasting sense of place, this newfound mobility caused a deeper feeling of rootlessness, comparing this spatial disorientation to the experience of an immigrant arriving in a foreign country, suggesting it was the foundation for what he called social adjustment problems among American children, where this was also accompanied by the looming threat of nuclear war, which triggered a surge of studies throughout the 1980s, warning that an entire generation was coming of age with a profound sense of helplessness, with Harvard's Department of Psychology stating, "This fear of nuclear annihilation fostered a..."
This dude did a deep dive. Holy sh! This is crazy.
sense of having no future, an anxiety that persisted into adulthood, influencing personal decisions like delaying marriage and creating a future generation. In England, the School of Humanities and Social Sciences observed a similar trend, writing, "The threat of nuclear war involves an overwhelming threat to the individual's future, that he or she will have no future, that there is no point in planning for marriage, children, or a career." And according to the Department of Psychology at Illinois, there is also cynicism, sadness, bitterness, and a sense of helplessness. Children perceive that the adult generation is unable or unwilling to halt the arms race, which would only be compounded by the Vietnam War, as it was transformed from a distant conflict into televised images of body bags, burning villages, and student protests, further dividing the country as 80% of the soldiers who served in Vietnam came from poor working-class families that could not afford college deferment, where the devastating
Bro, this is so crazy. So this is basically like a blueprint to how we've gotten to where we're at right now. What this dude is going over historically, and it's so dead on. Y'all got to tap in the comments and let me know. You know what's really interesting? I did this really dope reaction that should come out in a few weeks on my music reaction channel with Anthony Ray to American Pie. He's never heard Don McLean American Pie because he's Belgian. So I played it. And as I'm listening to it, I'm realizing, you know, the song is about the death of the age of innocence that we had in the 50s and the move to the 60s, you know, with the Vietnam War. And then this reminds me of the nuclear threat and a bunch of things. And you heard that shift in the music, where the music, the 60s and 70s had this like, there's a dystopianness to it. I mean, there's some happy joints here and there. You know, I think Bright Eyed Girl came out in the 60s, you know, so you have some stuff, but there was this shift in the sound and the feel of the music. Hence this age we're kind of talking about. And I'm like, it's so wild to see both. Now, my guy, this is a 20-minute video, and I don't want to jack all his content, okay? So I'm going to skip forward a little bit, and I would advise you guys, if you're enjoying this, go over. It's Damon Cassidy, and watch the full video. Let me see some of this, because he's actually cooking. I want to watch this whole damn thing, but I don't think it's right just to jack all his content. Okay, so we're at 8 minutes. It's a 20-minute video. So we're why the Vietnam War fundamentally divided baby boomers. How baby boomers actually did experience worse inflation. Actually, damn, that's only a couple seconds ahead. Let me play that. Why baby boomers are obsessed with Ronald Reagan. Yo, hold on. Baby boomers' experience with entry-level jobs. Why baby boomers became self-absorbed yuppies. Why baby boomers have always thought their life was harder. When will we realize history is repeating? Wow. Okay, which one of those should we watch before we get out of here? I want to hear this one real quick. Let's hear
and while America's guaranteed economic prosperity experienced the dollar losing 53.7% of its value between 1970 and 1980, or 10% more than the loss in value in the last 2 decades, baby boomers gravitated towards a leader who promised to restore order through less government intervention, low taxes, free markets, and deregulation, promising that the benefits would trickle down to the middle and working class, with Ronald Reagan's presidency solidifying a lasting ideological shift that redefined prosperity as the result of individual effort rather than collective support, deepening skepticism towards labor unions, social programs, federal regulations, and even fellow Americans, as they were reframed as barriers to growth rather than safeguards for stability, where the inevitable lack of long.
That's interesting because that's kind of the route. It feels like that's kind of what some of the Trump stuff, where Trump leans, is like towards some of the Reagan principles from what I'm seeing here. I don't know as much about Reagan as I should. I grew up with the whole concept of Reaganomics. So that's interesting.
Long-term planning throughout the 1950s and 60s left baby boomers entering a labor market that was never built to support them, with a 1983 New York Times article, Baby Boom to Job Bust, highlighting how companies that continued campus recruitment had compounded the oversupply problem by raising their hiring standards in fields like retail.
This video is so good, you guys. Hold on. I want to watch it all. Y'all are going to be like, you should just watch it all, but we can't do that to the homie. Go check out his channel. Let me look for, there's a couple of things they're accusing you guys. So I want to see this one. Why baby boomers became self-absorbed yuppies. Why baby boomers have always thought their life was harder. That one's good. And then let's do the history repeating itself, then we'll tap out.
Outcome, where despite the 2008 global financial crisis completely altering the trajectory of millennials' careers and Generation X experiencing the largest net worth decline of any generation, a 2010 Pew Research survey found that 80% of baby boomers were dissatisfied with the direction of the country. By comparison, just 60% of millennials, 69% of Gen Xers, and 76% of silent and greatest generation adults reported the same. And even more revealing, 21% of boomers believed their standard of living was lower than that of their parents at the same age, compared to just 14% of all non-boomer adults, creating a generational cycle of arguing over who had it worse, rather than channeling any collective effort into actually changing the system. And so what I hope that we can begin to recognize is that fundamentally we're saying the exact same thing, that this cycle is continuously repeating itself, and it will continue to do so because we're failing to have effective and productive conversations. If our attempt at making things better is arguing over who had it worse, that's a recipe for disaster. It's absurd that is the path we're choosing to go down. But in certain ways, it makes sense because in American culture especially, we have no ability of having conversations, absolutely none. And I think it's because predominantly we like to speak and not listen. And a lot of us, the things that we speak about, we have no idea what we're even talking about. We're regurgitating what we heard from the inflammatory news headlines and the propaganda that we're taught in schools and the biases that are inherited from our parents and all these other aspects. At some point, we have to realize that we're just human beings. I don't understand why we look at ourselves as the enemy. Yes,
Hold on, that was a moment to pause on because he's cooking. And I didn't want to let him stop because what did he just say? We talk too much, right? And not listen. And I'm absolutely listening. But I would like to interject here. And I'm just going to speak from personal experience. One of the things for me, I want to admit the guilt of in times regurgitating things I've heard or seen and the propaganda and not really knowing. And so when I come on here and speak, whether it's my own individual idea, my own opinion, something I came up with on my own, something I might have saw and have a different interpretation, or something regurgitating something I might have heard, I have those conversations to learn. I never really try to get on here and be like, yo, this is what it is, I try to learn and have conversations with y'all, and I read the comments. So I just wanted to highlight that because everything he's saying here is really important and very valiant, and I'm enjoying what he's saying.
At some point, we have to realize that we're just human beings. I don't understand why we look at ourselves as the enemy. Yes, it was hard to enter the labor market throughout the 70s and 80s. The system was not built for the massive population that entered the job market, but it wasn't built for the Gen Xers that entered the highly competitive and global job market that was defined by the dot-com bubble. It was especially not built for the millennials entering the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression to then just be completely left out to dry. And not only that, but blamed for their inability to achieve any sort of financial success. Gen Z, I couldn't even tell you what we're experiencing. It is a complete disaster, where 500,000 jobs are going to be completely just entry-level jobs are going to be completely gone by AI in the next 2 years. That's 2 years. 300,000 American jobs are outsourced every single year. Those aren't things that we talk about because we choose to argue, to do these pointless comments in the comment section, to get upset at your neighbor over these pointless events, than actually do anything of substance. There's no substance. And so I am here as a 25-year-old that I have 2 goals in my life, and this has primarily been my goals throughout my entire life. I care about the United States. I want to make this place just a little bit better than where I found it. And I don't know what that means, but I want to make it a better place because I care about it. I also want to have a family. And so for me to become a good father at some point, to have kids and hopefully grandchildren, I don't want them to look at me and say, why didn't you do more throughout your time? I don't want them to say, wow, Dad, wow, Grandpa, you lived through the greatest age of American history, because what they're now dealing with is scraps.
That is powerful. I'm going to leave it there. There's more to the video. I've skipped through a bunch of stuff. I recommend you guys go check this out. This is my first time hearing a bro, man. I'm a rock with him. And I'm very similar, but I'm 20 years older than him. But I'm just starting to get some success in my life. But that's what I'm like, man, I want to see America in a better place and create something for my kids. I have kids. I'm raising kids. I didn't expect this, man. This is dope. Y'all got to let me know. We can have more conversations. Sometimes I'll do a video like this. It gets 900 views, and then a different video will get like 10,000, But I think these conversations are important to have, so I still bring it up. You guys let me know what I got, what I missed, and tap in with me.
City boy! City boy!